You walk out back this morning with your coffee, and there it sits. That hydrangea you planted 3 summers ago, the leaves gone brown at the edges, the stems dry and gray, the blooms you waited all year for shriveled to nothing. You already told yourself it's finished, dead, time to dig it out. Don't. I have watched a hydrangea that looked exactly that far gone come back green and full inside of a week. Not with anything from the garden center. With 5 plain things most folks already have sitting in the kitchen or the tool shed. My people have used them for generations, long before anybody put a price tag and a fancy name on them. And here's the part that should make you a little angry. The companies that sell you the $40 bag with the pretty flower on the front have no reason to tell you what a spoonful of something you throw in the trash can do just as well. They never did. Their whole business runs on you not knowing. Stay with me. Around the middle of this, I'll show you the $1 rescue my grandfather used on a hydrangea everybody had given up on. The trick that wakes a plant up in days, not months. It costs less than that cup of coffee in your hand. Before we start, do me one favor. Drop your state or your growing zone down in the comments. I want to see where you're all watching from, because the timing on some of this changes depending on how cold your winters run. And I answer the folks who tell me, I grew up in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. We had a row of big blue hydrangeas along the north side of the wash house, right where my mother hung the wash on Monday mornings. I can still see the steam coming off the sheets in the cold air, and those blooms the size of a man's fist behind them. My grandfather never bought a thing to keep them that way, not once. What he used, I'm going to hand to you right now, the same way it was handed to me. Let's start with the one already sitting in your kitchen this very minute, coffee grounds. The ones you were about to toss. Now here's the question nobody stops to ask. Why does a plant that looks half dead perk up so fast when you give it something as simple as spent coffee? It doesn't make sense on its face. It's garbage. You already ran hot water through it. What could be left? Plenty. And this is where the plain way and the science finally shake hands. A hydrangea is a hungry plant. It wants nitrogen more than most things in your yard, because nitrogen is what builds the green in the leaf. When a hydrangea starts going pale, going yellow between the veins, going brown at the tips, 9 times out of 10 it is starving for nitrogen, and it cannot pull enough from tired old soil. Used coffee grounds run right around 2% nitrogen by weight. That doesn't sound like much until you understand that it releases slow over weeks, the way the plant actually wants to eat. Not a shock, a steady meal. But there's a second thing happening, and this is the part the English are only now writing papers about. Hydrangeas care about the sourness of the soil, what the books call pH. Coffee grounds, especially the fresh, unbrewed kind, run a touch acidic. And a hydrangea sitting in soil that's gone too sweet, too limey, physically cannot drink the iron and the aluminum that are already down there in the dirt. The food is right there, and the plant is starving in the middle of it because the door is locked. The acid in those grounds helps turn the key. Here is how I do it, and how my mother did it before me. Take your grounds and let them dry out first on a tray or an old newspaper for a day. Wet grounds clump up and grow mold, and that does you no good. Once they're dry, work a good double handful into the top inch of soil in a ring around the base of the plant, about a foot out from the stems, out toward where the roots are actually feeding. Never pile it against the trunk. Do this once every 3 or 4 weeks through the growing season. That's it. And a word before somebody in the comments corrects me. You'll hear folks say coffee grounds are strongly acidic and will burn everything. Used brewed grounds are close to neutral once they've been through the pot, only mildly sour, which is exactly what a hydrangea likes. It's the unbrewed grounds that pack the real punch. So if your soil is already sour, use the brewed. If it needs waking up, a small bit of the fresh will move the needle faster. Either way, you are feeding the plant and unlocking the dirt at the same time for the price of nothing. Now, the reason I start here isn't just because it works. It's because of what it teaches you. Every single morning, most households in this country pour a fortune's worth of plant food straight down the drain or into the trash, and then drive to the store and pay for a bag of the same thing with a chemical name on it. That right there is the whole game. They profit from the gap between what you throw away and what you don't know you're throwing away. But coffee only fixes half the problem. Because I told you the plant can be starving in the middle of plenty, the door locked, coffee helps with one lock. There's another one, and it's the reason your leaves might be going yellow while the veins stay green, and no amount of coffee will touch it. For that, you need what's sitting in your medicine cabinet, Epsom salt. Here's the puzzle. You've been feeding the plant, watering it faithful, and still the leaves go a sickly yellow while the little veins running through them stay dark green, like somebody drew a road map on a pale sheet. Folks see that and they panic and they dump on more of the wrong thing, and it gets worse. Why? Because that exact pattern, yellow leaf with green veins, is the plant crying out for magnesium, not nitrogen, magnesium. And here's the thing most people never learned. Magnesium is the metal sitting right at the center of every bit of chlorophyll in that leaf. Chlorophyll is the green. It's the little factory that turns sunlight into food. No magnesium, no chlorophyll, no green, no food, and the plant slowly quits from the inside even while you're standing there watering it. Epsom salt is not really salt the way you think of salt. The old name for it is magnesium sulfate. It is magnesium and sulfur bound together, and it melts into water instant. That magnesium is the exact thing the plant needs to rebuild the green. The sulfur, as a bonus, sweetens the acid balance a touch. The same door unlocking business we talked about with the coffee. My grandmother kept a box of it in the wash house, and I'll be honest with you, half of it went into people's aching feet on a Saturday night, but the other half went to the plants. She'd take 1 tablespoon, level, dissolve it in a full gallon of water, stir it till it disappeared, and pour it slow around the base of a struggling hydrangea once a month, no more. You can also mix that same solution in a spray bottle and mist the leaves lightly in the cool of the morning, because a hurting plant can drink a little straight through the leaf faster than through the roots. Within days, I have watched that green come flooding back into a yellow leaf-like color coming back into a face. Now here is your caution, and I won't skip it the way the label on some fancy product would. More is not better. Epsom salt is water soluble, which means if you dump a cup of it on there thinking you'll fix it twice as fast, you'll throw off the balance and lock out calcium instead, and trade one problem for another. 1 tablespoon per gallon, once a month, during the growing season only. Respect the plant, and it'll respect you back. Land grant researchers, the folks at the big agricultural colleges, have measured this for decades. Magnesium deficiency shows up first and worst in sandy soils and in soils that have been rained on hard, because magnesium washes down and away with the water. If you're in a place that gets heavy spring rains, and a lot of you telling me your zones down in the comments are your soil is very likely short on magnesium right now and you never knew it, that's not folklore. That's just what the water does to the dirt over time. So now you've unlocked the nitrogen with the coffee and rebuilt the green with the magnesium. The plant is alive again. The leaves are full, but it still won't bloom. You get all these beautiful leaves and not a single one of those big round flower heads you actually planted the thing for. That's the third problem, and it's the most heartbreaking one, because the plant looks healthy and still won't give you what you want. For that, you reach into the fruit bowl. Banana peels. Everybody knows a banana is good for you. Almost nobody stops to think about why, and fewer still know that the very thing that makes it good for your body is the thing your hydrangea is desperate for when it won't flower. Potassium. A flowering plant runs on 3 main foods. Nitrogen for the leaves, which we handled, phosphorus for the roots, and potassium for the blooms and for the plant's whole plumbing system, the way it moves water and sugar around inside itself and decides where to spend its energy. Hydrangea, loaded with leaves and no flowers, is very often a plant that has plenty of nitrogen and nowhere near enough potassium. It's building the factory and never opening the store. A banana peel is one of the richest scraps of potassium you will find in an ordinary kitchen. When my father wanted a shy hydrangea to bloom, he never bought a thing called Bloom Booster. He took the peels, and he had 2 ways of doing it. The slow way, chop the peels into small pieces with a knife, an inch or so, and bury them a few inches down in the soil out at the drip line where the feeder roots are. As they break down, they hand their potassium straight to the roots, slow and steady, over a month or more. The only trick is bury them, don't leave them lying on top, or you'll invite every critter in the county to dinner. The fast way, and this is the one for a plant in trouble. Take 3 or 4 peels, drop them in a jar or a bucket, cover them with water, and let it sit 2 or 3 days. The potassium leaches right out into the water. Then you pour that banana water around the base of the plant. The plant drinks it in almost immediate because it's already dissolved, already in a form the roots can grab. That's how you get a response in days instead of weeks. Now, I can already hear the skeptic Isn't that just a tiny amount? It is a gentle amount, and that's the point. You cannot burn a plant with banana water the way you can with the harsh salted stuff from a bag. It's slow release by its very nature. You can pour it on every couple of weeks and never once worry you've overdone it. Gentle and forgiving is exactly what a stress plant needs. The harsh, fast, blue crystal fertilizers give a plant a sugar high and then a crash. And a weak plant sometimes can't survive the crash. The old way doesn't gamble with the plant's life. And I want you to sit with something here, because this is the heart of the whole thing. Coffee grounds, a spoon of foot soak, banana peels. Every one of these was headed for the trash or the compost. Every one of these is either free or costs pennies. And every single one of them is sold back to you at the store, dried and ground and packaged for many times what it's worth, with a picture of a flower on the bag so you feel good handing over your money. It isn't one sneaky company. It's the whole arrangement, an entire industry built brick by brick on keeping regular folks convinced that the answer has to be bought when the plain people never stopped knowing it was sitting in the kitchen the whole time. Which brings me to the fourth thing, and this one comes not from the kitchen but from the fire. Now, I know a lot of you have been standing in your yard this whole time thinking, that's fine for somebody planting fresh, but my hydrangea has been in that same spot for 15 years. The soil's packed hard, the roots are deep and tangled. I can't be digging peels down in there without tearing the whole thing up. I hear you, and this next stretch is for you especially, because the biggest lie in all of this is that you need to start over. You don't. An established plant in tired ground is the easiest one to bring back, and here is exactly how you do it this weekend without disturbing a single root. Now, that same thinking, knowing what a thing is actually hungry for before you spend a penny, is what I sat down and wrote out proper, because a video only holds so much. I put 3 books together on it, reading ripeness and storing food so it lasts weeks instead of days, feeding tomatoes and peppers and roses and hostas and clematis by zone with a real cutoff date, and killing the nest instead of chasing the ant with borax and vinegar and baking soda from under your sink. Over 328 pages of plain, tested, doing the timing, the amounts, the diagnosis, all the part that never fits in 20 minutes. If you want it in your hands, scan the QR code right there on your screen, link in the description, pinned comment, the collection. And it comes from the same place this next bit does, so let me hand you the peels the way my father handled them. Wood ash from your fireplace, your wood stove, your burn barrel, the gray powder you've been shoveling out and throwing away your whole life. Here's the surprising part. Wood ash is loaded with potassium, the very bloom food we just talked about, but it also does something coffee does the opposite of. Coffee makes soil more sour. Wood ash makes it sweeter, less acidic, raises that pH, and that's where you have to be a little bit smart. And I'm going to make you smart right now in about 30 seconds, the way it took me years to learn. If you want blue hydrangea flowers, you keep the soil sour. Coffee, yes. Wood ash, no. But if you want pink or red hydrangea flowers, wood ash is your best friend, because sweetening the soil is exactly what turns those blooms pink. The color of a hydrangea bloom is nothing more than a report card on your soil. Sour soil, below about 5.5 on the scale, the plant can grab aluminum and the flowers come out blue. Sweet soil, up above 6.5, the aluminum locks away and the flowers come out pink. Same plant, same roots. The dirt decides the color. For the established plant with hard, tired soil, here's the weekend job. Take a cup of cool, fully dead wood ash, and I mean fully cold, sifted of any chunks. Sprinkle it thin in a wide ring around the plant, out at the drip line, never against the stem. Then, and this is the part for old packed soil, take a garden fork, not a shovel, just a fork, and rock it gently into the ground here and there around that ring, an inch or two, just enough to open little channels. You're not digging, you're not cutting roots, you're just poking holes so the ash and the rain can work their way down to where the feeder roots live. Water it in well. That's the whole thing. Do that once in the spring and you've delivered a month's worth of potassium and adjusted your color all in one afternoon to an old plant without upsetting it one bit. If your blooms have been coming out a muddy, confused purple, that's a plant caught between 2 soils, and this is how you push it firmly one direction and get a clean color again. One caution, because I promised you I wouldn't sell you anything the easy way. A little wood ash goes a long way. A cup around a good-sized plant once a year. dump a whole bucket on, and you'll sweeten that soil so hard and so fast the plant won't be able to feed it all, and you'll do more harm than the neglect ever did. The old way is always a light hand. My grandfather used to say the ground is like bread dough. You can always add more. You can never take it back out. And there's one more from the kitchen before I give you the secret my grandfather saved for the plants he thought were truly gone. This one you've been stepping on in the trash your whole life without a second thought. Eggshells. Now, what could an eggshell possibly do? It's just the shell. But that shell is almost pure calcium carbonate. And calcium is the thing that builds the cell walls in a plant, the very frame that holds every leaf and every stem up straight and strong. A plant short on calcium goes weak and floppy, new growth comes out twisted and stunted, and it can't hold water right. And calcium, like magnesium, washes out of the soil a little more with every hard rain and every watering year after year. So an old established plant in old soil is very often quietly starving for it, and nobody ever thinks to check. Here's the way to make eggshells actually work, because most people do it wrong and then say it doesn't work. A whole eggshell tossed on the ground takes a year or two to break down. Too slow to save a plant in trouble. You have to make it small. Rinse your shells, let them dry, and crush them fine as you can get them, in a bowl with the back of a spoon, or run them through an old coffee grinder till they're near powder. The finer they are, the faster the soil can dissolve them and hand the calcium to the roots. Work a quarter cup of that powder into the top of the soil around the plant every month or so. And there's a bonus the old-timers knew. Those sharp crushed shells scattered on top of the soil keep the slugs and the snails off your plant because they won't crawl across the sharp edges. So you feed the plant and guard it in the same motion. 2 chores, 1 free handful of what you were throwing away. So now look at what you've got. Coffee for nitrogen and to sour the soil. Epsom salt for the magnesium that rebuilds the green. Banana peels for the potassium that brings the blooms. Wood ash for potassium and to set your color. Eggshells for the calcium that holds it all up straight and strong. 5 things, all free or nearly free, all headed for the trash, that together cover almost everything a hydrangea can be hungry for. But I promised you one more. The one my grandfather kept for the plants everybody else had already given up on. The ones that looked exactly like the one you walked out to this morning. And this is the one almost nobody in the outside world talks about, because you truly cannot sell it for what it's worth, and it works faster than any of the rest. Molasses, plain unsulfured blackstrap molasses, the kind for baking. A jar of it costs a few dollars and lasts you 2 full seasons. Now here's why this is the finale, and here's the thing that took the science folks the longest to circle back around to. Everything else we talked about feeds the plant. Molasses does not feed the plant. Molasses feeds the dirt. It feeds the living thing in the soil that the whole modern industry spent 100 years poisoning and forgetting about. Because your soil, if it's healthy, is alive. It is packed full of billions of tiny microbes, bacteria, and fungi, so small you'll never see one, and those little creatures are the real farmers down there. They are the ones that break the nutrients down into the exact form the roots can drink. A plant with dead soil around it can be sitting in a pile of fertilizer and still starve, because there's nothing alive to serve the meal. That's the locked door again, the deepest lock of all. And here's what the harsh chemical fertilizers do that nobody puts on the bag. Used year after year, the salts in them slowly kill off those microbes, so the soil goes dead, so the plant needs more of the bag next year and more the year after. That's the dependence. That's the whole machine, laid bare. They sell you the thing that kills the soil, so you have to keep buying the thing that feeds the plant the soil can no longer feed. Molasses is loaded with sugar, and sugar is exactly what those microbes eat. It's carbon, it's iron, it's a feast for the living soil. You pour a little molasses water on tired dirt, and within a matter of days, those microbe populations explode back to life, and suddenly every other bit of food in that soil, the coffee, the banana, the ash, the eggshell, all of it, gets unlocked and served up to the roots at once. That's why a plant can turn around in days. You're not just feeding it, you're waking up the whole kitchen underground that had gone dark. Here's exactly how my grandfather did it, and this is the $1 rescue I promised you back at the start. 1 tablespoon of blackstrap molasses, 1 gallon of warm water, warm so it dissolves clean, stir it until there's not a streak of it left. Then pour that whole gallon slow around the base of a struggling hydrangea, letting it soak all the way down. Once every 2 weeks for a plant in real trouble, then back off to once a month once it's recovered. You can add a tablespoon of that Epsom salt right into the same gallon and deliver the microbe food and the magnesium in a single pour. That combination, the sugar to wake the soil and the magnesium to rebuild the green, is the closest thing to a resurrection I have ever seen in a garden, and I have seen it more times than I can count. I watched my grandfather do this to a hydrangea by the wash house the year after a hard drought, a plant so brown and brittle my father had already said to pull it out and start over. Grandfather just shook his head, mixed his molasses water in an old tin pail, and poured it out slow, twice, 2 weeks apart. By the end of that month, there was green pushing out along stems we'd all counted as dead wood. By high summer, it was blooming again, those blue heads big as a fist behind my mother's wash on the line, same as always. He never said a word about it. To him, it wasn't a miracle. It was just Tuesday. It was just what you did, because the good Lord gave us everything we needed, and it would be a waste and a shame to let a living thing die for want of a spoonful of what's in the pantry. That is the knowledge they hoped you'd never come looking for. Not because it's secret, but because it's free, and there's no money in free. The whole towering business of bagged plant food, the bright pictures, the promises, the special formula for this and the special formula for that, all of it stands on one quiet assumption. That you've forgotten. That your grandmother's knowledge died with her, and now you have no choice but to buy your way back to what she did for nothing. The plain people simply never forgot, because we never had the money to be talked out of it, and thank God for that. So, think about what you just got back. It isn't really 5 fertilizers. It's the thing behind them. It's the understanding that a struggling plant is a hungry plant or a plant sitting in dead dirt, and that the answer to both of those has been in your kitchen and your fireplace and your fruit bowl the whole time. You don't have to be at the mercy of the store anymore. You don't have to read a bag and hope. You can look at a yellow leaf with green veins and know exactly what it wants. You can look at a plant with leaves and no blooms and know exactly what it's short on. That's not a customer they can keep selling to. That's a person who's free of them. And that, I think, is who you really are, or you wouldn't have watched a plain man talk this long. You're somebody who'd rather know than be sold to. Somebody who trusts a thing that's been proven over 100 years and 3 generations, more than a promise printed on a package this spring. So this weekend, before you dig anything out, before you drive to the store, go stand by that hydrangea you'd written off. Save your coffee grounds tomorrow morning. Crush a few eggshells. Mix that 1 tablespoon of molasses in a gallon of warm water and pour it out slow, the way my grandfather did, and then just watch. Give it 2 weeks. I think you'll be surprised what wants to live. And do tell me down in the comments. I asked you at the start to leave your state or your zone, and I meant it. So if you haven't yet, do it now. Because the timing on the molasses and the wood ash shifts depending on how hard your winters run, and I want to steer you right. Tell me too which one you're going to try first, and whether your blooms have been coming in blue or pink or that muddy purple, because that tells me a story about your soil I can help you read. Don't just think it, type it out. I read them, and I answer. If any part of this gave you back something you didn't know you'd lost, then come along with us. This isn't a channel so much as it's a table of folks who've decided to stop overpaying for what nature and the old ways already hand us for free. That's all it is. Plain knowledge, passed neighbor to neighbor, before it slips away for good. And next time, I'm going to show you the one thing my grandmother buried at the base of every rose bush she ever planted. A single common item from the pantry that she swore kept the black spot and the aphids off all season long, and never once did she buy a spray to do it. The English are only now writing about why it works. We've known for 100 years. I'll see you then. This video gave you the overview, but there's more. Inside my membership, the Amish Field Circle, I walk you through all 5 Amish fertilizers, the exact amounts and timing for your zone, the deeper part I couldn't fit here. And you can ask me your own question, and I answer myself, not some machine. You won't be alone. Old ways growers just like you are already in there. Just point your phone's camera at the code. Cancel anytime. Come join me. Now, if those hydrangeas surprised you, imagine what these simple feedings can do for your tired roses. I'll show you how to bring them back to life, blooming again in days. It's starting right here.